is everything in between. He's the star, Richard Bazzi, Schultz Ford at schultzford.com. I'm Bubba from 100.7 Star. And our star with us today is not just a star, he's almost like a shooting star because he has moved so fast through the course of his career. Perry McCarthy, welcome to Cars, Stars, and Everything in Between. And explain to everybody listening what I meant by a shooting star because you move so fast.
I wish I did. I would have been world champion if that description was correct, Bubba. But it's great to be here with you. I'm Perry McCarthy. I'm an ex-Formula One driver, and I was what's called the Stig on the BBC Top Gear motoring show.
So I have to be honest with you. Sorry, Bubba. I have to be honest with you. I had to look up what a Stig was. I had no idea what that was. But I saw it referenced. I saw you were the Stig. I saw that, and I'm still a little vague on it. Perry, can you tell me what it is?
Yeah, to somebody that's not that has no idea, they're listening to the very first time. What do you mean when you say you were the Stig? STIG.
You're right. I should have explained it better. We've got a show in the UK, or had a show many years ago it was on the BBC channel, and it was called Top Gear. And it became quite a famous motoring program. But then it went off air for quite a few years. But then it came back on air in 2002. But this time, instead of only just talking about cars with their presenters, they decided they wanted a secret, mysterious racing driver as their test driver segment of the show. So because this thing was going to be slightly unworldly, they gave it a name, and it was called the Stig. So nobody ever saw me. Nobody knew it was me, or they shouldn't have known it was me. That was the entire gag. It was this big secret, and it really caught on because people really wanted to know who was the driver and everything else. It was incredible. When we kicked the show off, shortly afterward, the question of who is the Stig became one of the top 10 questions asked on the internet. I was just behind, is there a God and am I pregnant?
So before we get
I'm not even going to touch that.
You're obviously a best-selling author, but obviously as a Formula One driver, I mean, before we get into how you became a Formula One driver, I just want to talk about what is the fastest you're aware that you ever drove in your entire career?
Well, it was at Le Mans, and this was after they'd adjusted the circuit to take out the incredibly long Mulsanne Straight. So that's still there, but they punctuated it with 2 chicanes. So I wasn't as quick as cars from yesteryear, but I was still pulling 225 miles an hour.
Okay, wow. That's on the straight. Would you tell us? I actually had an aspiration once upon my life to drive a race car. So, but for those of the people that don't know what a chicane is, can you tell us what a chicane is?
Yeah, think of a stretch of road which is incredibly irritating, where you have to slow down, take it in second gear, have patience, and then accelerate back out of it. So in another way of describing it, a chicane can be a slow right-hand corner immediately followed by a slow left-hand corner, and then you exit to go back out onto a much faster stretch. So it's just like a little S. So it just slows you down, but it's full of technicalities because obviously you've got to brake, you mustn't lock the tires as you're coming into it, and you're trying to get through it as quickly as possible. And of course, put the power down as quickly as possible so that you're launching back onto the next part of the circuit as fast as you possibly can.
So when you think about that level of driving, and then you think of NASCAR, right, which is just cars driving around fast to the left with a big oval track, do you ever say to yourself, my God, that was easy, that would be easy?
No, I tell you something, please don't say that to the NASCAR boys.
I was joking.
Yeah, oh, okay. Those boys experience stuff that I'm really not used to because they're in a crowd all the time. Yep. And they're pulling, goodness, I'm not even clear what they're pulling, definitely 200 miles an hour. And they're like inches away from each other all the time. So their strategy and the teamwork that they've got is incredible. You know, they're all brave boys. They're on the other side of the fence, there are probably more technicalities inside Formula racing, such as Formula One, because of the downforce and the aerodynamics and some of the engine configurations, etc. But they know what they're doing. Those boys, they really do.
So Perry, you said you pronounced the word, and I'll say this: I'm a Ford dealer. I represent Ford Motor Company.
Yes,
and I'm a Ford dealer in 4 separate locations. Our CEO is Jim Farley, and Jim Farley is, he is a car guy. He races, and he got us back in. I'm going to say this. I don't know how to pronounce this. This is my question. Lemans. Is that Le Mans? How do you pronounce that? Because I've never been accurate on it.
chaps, I'm so sorry. I lost the internet connection there. We're experiencing a bit of weather.
How do you spell how do you pronounce Lemans? Le Mans. Le Mans.
You got it one of those times anyway. I'm not going to tell you which one. No, it's Le Mans.
Le Mans. So you don't pronounce the N or the S?
Well, you don't pronounce the S really. If you're speaking with a French accent, it's Le Mans. But you know what they're like. They're French just put on the accent just to confuse the rest of us.
They're so arrogant. Oh, is that hysterical? But anyway, I'm a Ford dealer, and our CEO, Jim Farley, is gotten us back into Le Mans this year. And so we fared pretty well with it. But Jim Farley is really a racing advocate. And of course, I love it. I love fast cars. I saw that over the weekend, what's his name? Hamilton has won his first race in like 3 years, right?
Well, absolutely. But just
Lewis
one
Hamilton.
second, just going back to your friend Jim, who runs Ford, is that they're not just Le Mans. Ford have announced big plans to come back into Formula One now with the Red Bull racing team. And it's going to be, it's fantastic to have Ford back in. I've got a bit of a Ford background myself because I won in the junior championships. It's all single-seater, but I won the British Formula Ford Championship. That's a bit more like NASCAR, Bubba, that when you're all around each other and it's horribly competitive, etc. And through the ranks, I then drove for Ford, Benetton Ford in Formula One, but only as their third driver. That was with Michael Schumacher. And then later on in life, in the World Championship GT, I drove for Ford Panos, the Panos team. Yeah. And I led Daytona actually in a Ford powered Dyson. With only 2 hours to go, unfortunately, we broke down. So I never got my Daytona watch, unfortunately. But yeah, so I've got a bit of Ford in me as well. And I actually, when I was a very small child, lived in Dagenham, which was the home of Ford UK.
Is that right?
How about that, Richard? You learned something new about Perry McCarthy.
I definitely did. And we're going to send this to Jim Farley. This is very cool. I love what you do. But I want to hear the part about the inspiration, the lectures that you give. And I'd like to hear about what you use as that inspiration.
And by the way, we'll hear from Perry McCarthy about his lectures, about his best-selling books, about his inspiration when we return, because this is Cars, Stars, and everything in between. That's Richard Bazzi. I'm Bubba, and our guest today is Perry McCarthy, and we'll have more with him when we come back on Cars, Stars, and everything in between. Stand by. Richard, that was perfect. You're the best.
Standing in the Hall of Fame.
I'm just going to save this. Give me one moment.
I'm going to interrupt you as soon as you get us back on.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Perfect. Just saving. Give me 1 second. All right, and here we go. 100.1 FM, AM 1020 KDKA. This is Car Stars and everything in between. He's the star, Richard Bazzi, Schultz Ford, schultzford.com, a Bubba from 100.7 Star. And our star today is Perry McCarthy, Formula One. And Richard Bazzi, you were just asking an amazing question about his inspiration and about his book and his speeches.
And I really would like to hear all that, because we've all of a sudden discovered we have something really great in common, and that's Ford Motor Company. So that's really cool. But I really, before I go on, I really have to ask you, what kind of car you drive?
Well, most of the time I drive a Mini Cooper.
Well, of course.
But until recently I had a Ferrari 458, which is really nice.
So, and I have to be honest with you, a 458 Ferrari, was it a Spider or a hardtop?
I had the Spider, actually, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
my God. What color?
I'm very lucky. It doesn't mess my hair up with the roof down.
Yeah, I share that. We have the same barber. So that's fabulous. I love that car, but you got rid of it.
Yeah, but it was a great car. I really, really liked it. Yeah, I'm pretty hard on cars, to be honest. It takes a lot to impress me, and that car, that suited the bill.
Well,
that's because you're a Formula One driver. You've driven at 220 miles per hour. You're my God, of course you're hard on cars.
So sitting in my showroom right now is a black Ford GT, and it's just sitting there waiting to be driven hard. If you're coming back to the United States ever, you call me, and I would take this car out to the track for you to drive, because I'm afraid of it.
I'll see you on Friday morning.
Oh, that's fabulous. No, truly, I'm not afraid of it because I love speed. I'm afraid to damage it because I think I'll try to push it too hard. And maybe if you're sitting, because it does have a passenger seat, and maybe you can give me a tutorial.
Richard, let me give you a heads up on that suggestion. That's not going to happen, because I've got a pathological hatred of sitting next to anybody, and I mean anybody. Yeah.
So that's why you got to. Did you pull all the seats out of the Mini Cooper so nobody can get in with you?
Oh no, I don't mind people getting in with me, but it's just that I'm really not keen on them driving.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. But I love, and I will adopt this new term, pathological hatred. That will now become mine. I will coin that.
I love that.
A pathological, boy, I can give you a category of things that would fall under that for me. But it's a pathological hatred. I love it.
I think it falls into something that you was asking me a little earlier on about getting started and coming through and that kind of motivation, really. That unfortunately, I had a couple of situations which weren't of my making. To come into motor racing, I would have much preferred much richer parents, but I just didn't have them. I applied. I put out advertisers for, to try and get richer parents, but nobody took me up on it. So coming into motor racing, I was very, very late and discovered that I needed to get money. So I went to work on oil rigs for 2 years. So I stayed out on the oil rigs for 2 years to get the money together. And then by the time I actually came onto the track, I was like 21 years old. So by today's standards, that's insane, because, you've got to work your way up. And I met Bernie Ecclestone, who ran and controlled Formula One. Very soon, I was introduced to a lot of people straight away. And he said, look, son, he said, with no money, no family money, no sponsors, and no experience, and being 21, your chances of reaching Formula One are about 1,000,000 to 1. Wow. And I thought, okay, good point. But I'm not really going to let that put me off. So I had to come in, to be quite honest, I had to come in and win immediately against people that had been out there for years. Because if I hadn't have won immediately, that it was going to be over. I only had so much money from the oil rigs. And believe me, even though that's a lot of money, in motor racing, that gets dumped very, very quickly indeed. So I did win the championship. Unfortunately, I then had a huge crash, which put me out for a year. And I had to get myself back together and repair. But while I was doing all that, it was just, Richard, if you'd been close to me, you would have been hearing from me all the time to get sponsorship, name on the car, any deal I could do, give me a road car, give me free clothes, give me free food, anything to just keep going.
And is that part of your inspiration for your speeches in your book?
There's been a lot of lessons learned, and there's been a lot of experiences. And I think people like to have me along because, having overcome an awful lot of things, it's a question that I get asked quite a lot of times. Why did you keep going? Well, I had my sights fixed on doing this, and luckily enough, I wasn't standing in the garden barking at the moon on my own. There were quite a few other people who thought that I had what it took. So if I could keep winning, keep showing speed, then people, even without money, kept giving me another chance, normally in a fairly bad team, but it would be the level up. So I was still progressing upward in motor racing, even though it wasn't with a great team. And if I could do something with that car and that team that nobody expected, even coming seventh was like a win a lot of the time. People would go, that car's not qualifying, and you just finished seventh, So that's how I kind of built my reputation, hanging on for dear life and sheer complete desperation, really. No money and no backup plan. It had to work.
What a story. So you began your career at age 21. What age did you end it?
Well, I got hurt again a couple of times during the course of my career. But the last time I got hurt, I was 43. And that finished me. I mean, at 43, I was probably only going to get older and slower anyway. But I was still okay at that point. But I ripped my shoulder very badly. Really ripped it up. That was it.
Could you tell a difference in your reaction times from 21 to 43?
No, reaction times, no problem. My reaction times, even at my age now, are still spot on. What is nowhere near as good is that absolute desire at all costs to be fastest. Oh, wow. Whereas it's absolutely every part of your life, that obsession to be fitter, stronger, work with the engineers to take whatever it took as a risk to try and be fastest in the stuff I was driving. No, that's as far as driving's concerned, all that stuff's completely gone, because having no chance whatsoever now of going out to win the Le Mans 24 Hours or win the Formula One World Championship, then that was what it was all about for me, to win Grand Prix and to win the World Championship. Without that, there wasn't that driving force. So maybe I got hurt at the right time.
Tell everybody about the book that you wrote in case somebody would like to read more about you.
My book's going really, really well. We sold another copy just last year.
Perry, listen, I love motorsports. I love racing. I love watching the Formula One Netflix shows. I love all that. There's three parts of it to me. One is the car, one is the driver, and then one is the strategy. Because you really do need a strategy when you're racing at those speeds. Is that right?
I think strategy really is an ongoing thing that happens as the cards fall during the race. I would agree with you about the components that are required. I would probably extend that certainly to the team. So, you need a very, very good driver. You need a super car, and you really do need a great team. And most of the time, strategy calls are hopefully within the remit of that team, that they make the right ones. But even at World Championship level, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's IndyCar, whether it's Formula One, the human interest is that people still mess up. So we can see great calls, great drives, great teamwork, and we can see the opposite where there's a failure. And that is a human interest story. But when it all falls right, you see, the absolute best come to the top and also stay there generally.
And when you watch, and I'm assuming you still watch racing.
Oh, Formula One, absolutely. And occasionally I tune into IndyCar as well.
So when you do that, do you do it with a critical eye? Do you do it saying, oh, well, look at that opportunity, I think he missed it? Or do you look at it as a fan?
I think I would probably take out the word critical most of the time, but I certainly see stuff that's happening, and I can certainly see stuff where I think, think you may have made a small mistake there or whatever. Right. But it's not it's not for me to tell them, because they, with the data and the experience that they've got at their, within their hands, they've probably realized they've made the same mistake even faster than I've realized it,
Well, the on the Netflix show, of course, it really glamorizes Formula One drivers, and it makes you want to do it. It really does. Kara, who is part of the digital team that brought you here, has a husband who said the one thing he said was Formula One drivers must have strong necks because being thrown around the car that way, and I guess G-force. But he said must have strong necks.
Well, it's the G-force. You're absolutely right, because when you're pulling over 5G in a corner, imagine your head and your crash helmet weighs like 11 pounds.
Oh, my God.
You're approaching 60 pounds going on your neck to the left, or 60, or going to the right. The great thing about the acceleration in a Formula One car, though, is that when you are accelerating and you've got those G forces, it pulls your face back. You've got no more lines. You look 7 years younger. It's incredible.
That's amazing. Well, listen, Perry.
I'll be driving a race car soon.
Perry, if anybody would like to get more information about you, your book, or your speaking engagements, how can they follow you, and how can they follow along with you?
Oh, thank you very much for putting it out there. I really enjoy giving appearances and speaking about motor racing and tapping into why a company has had the event. Is it a sales thing? Are they motivation? And are they merging with somebody, communication? There's all these sorts of things that I'm kind of used to. And believe me, I've got an opinion on nearly everything. But it's just perrymccarthy.co.uk. So I'm fairly easy to track down.
Perry McCarthy, thank you for being on Car Stars. Thanks, and Perry. Everything in between with us.
Bubba, Richard, thanks for having me.